My husband, who is 34 years old, and I, a 26-year-old woman, found ourselves on a remarkable journey together that began during a pivotal time in my life. At the time, I was determined to turn my life around after having dropped out of high school several years prior. I made the bold decision to return to school and earn my credentials, which marked a significant shift in my trajectory. My husband worked in construction, a job that demanded physical strength and resilience. Our paths crossed unexpectedly one evening as I left night school. He was waiting for his cousin, who seemed to be taking an unusually long time to arrive. Seeing my predicament, he approached me, seeking help in locating his cousin. We struck up a conversation, and as we chatted, I felt a sense of ease and safety in his presence. Concerned about the hour and my well-being, he generously offered to drive me home. I appreciated this gesture immensely and happily accepted his offer. This act of kindness marked the beginning of our connection, as it became a regular occurrence for him to drive me after night school. Each journey offered us an opportunity to get to know one another better, and it wasn't long before our friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Throughout my educational journey, he remained an unwavering source of support and encouragement. His belief in me was palpable, and he took significant steps to help me achieve my goals. He assisted me in gaining admission to college and even covered my tuition fees, which allowed me to focus fully on my studies. After I graduated from college, we celebrated this milestone by tying the knot. Shortly after, I secured an internship that opened the door to my professional future. With time and dedication, I climbed the corporate ladder and eventually became an executive personal assistant, working directly with one of the company's top executives. While my husband was genuinely thrilled about my career advancement, the physical distance created by our demanding jobs began to take its toll on our relationship. Despite the challenges we faced, we remained committed to making our marriage work. However, complications arose during business trips with my boss, whose behavior shifted from casual banter to overt romantic advances. What initially started as innocent flirtation soon escalated into a more serious and daring dynamic. My boss began expressing his desires openly, which caught me off guard. I won't deny that I reveled in the attention, but his directness both surprised and unnerved me. Our interactions extended beyond the confines of our professional responsibilities, as he began taking me on lavish getaways and showering me with extravagant gifts. Sometimes, he would even deposit money into my account, creating a sense of excitement and danger. We both understood the boundaries of our respective relationships, viewing our affair as a way to explore unfulfilled fantasies while keeping everything discreet. To maintain our secret, we took deliberate measures to keep our involvement hidden from the world around us. Things took a new turn when my boss organized a trip to Mauritius to celebrate the success of a significant project that we had just completed. This project not only highlighted his capabilities, positioning him for a potential promotion, but it also promised similar recognition for me. I concocted a story about a business trip that held exciting opportunities for advancement, knowing my husband would feel proud but also a bit sad about my departure. He expressed happiness for my success, though I sensed the underlying concern in his voice. During the trip, I found myself momentarily swept away by the stunning scenery and the enjoyable activities we engaged in, allowing me to momentarily escape the mounting issues within my marriage. At one point, I called my husband and concocted an excuse to extend my stay, further deepening the web of lies I was spinning. When I finally returned home, however, I was met with a startling reality. My bags were packed and placed by the front door, and divorce papers lay atop the pile. To my utter shock, I discovered that I couldn't unlock the door, the locks had been changed. In a state of panic, I attempted to reach my husband by phone, but my calls went unanswered. I stood at the front door for hours, anxious and bewildered, hoping for some explanation or a chance to talk things over. As the hours dragged on and my frustration grew, I eventually reached out to a friend. She kindly offered to let me stay at her place for the night while I tried to figure out what had gone wrong. I confided in her about the chaotic turn of events that had brought me to this point, prompting her to take action. In a fit of anger, she called my husband, his friends, and even his workplace, seeking answers. That night, he showed up at my friend's house, and an intense argument broke out. The conflict primarily revolved around her actions involving his workplace and the manner in which he was treating me. Once the heated exchange subsided, I gathered my courage and confronted my husband about why he was putting me through this ordeal. Without uttering a single word, he opened his phone and displayed incriminating photographs and videos of me with my boss at the beach and in the hotel lobby, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. When he demanded to know the duration of the affair, I felt the weight of my choices crashing down on me. Words failed me as I struggled to offer an excuse for my actions, feeling utterly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. He repeated the question with an unsettling intensity that was entirely foreign to our previous interactions. His voice, usually calm and steady, now carried an edge that sent chills down my spine. Overwhelmed with a surge of emotion and on the brink of tears, I knew I could no longer keep the truth to myself. After a long pause, I finally admitted that the affair had been ongoing for 4 months. As the words left my lips, I saw his expression shift from confusion to raw anger, a storm brewing behind his eyes. It became evident that my confession had ignited a fire within him, and he appeared on the verge of tears himself. He admonished me, his accusation echoing in the room. He questioned how I could betray his trust so profoundly, risking not just our relationship but the future of our entire family. Each word struck me like a blow, shattering my heart into pieces. Overcome with guilt, I found myself on my knees, pleading for his forgiveness, desperately trying to make him understand the depths of my remorse. However, his reaction was immediate and severe. He expressed his desire for a divorce with an unwavering steadfastness that left me breathless. Then he walked away, leaving an empty void in his absence. I genuinely love my husband and am deeply committed to making our relationship work. The thought of a life without him is unimaginable. My actions, while undeniably reckless, stemmed from a moment of weakness. I was caught up in the excitement and the allure of a promotion that seemed to dangle just out of reach. I recognize now that what I did was foolish. The trust we had built over the years felt irreparably damaged, and I was left grappling with how to rebuild it. What could I possibly do to persuade him to reconsider the divorce? We had shared so much together, and the idea of ending it like this felt unbearable. The affair, although exhilarating in the moment, lacked any emotional connection. My boss was a married man, fully aware of my marital status as well, which complicated matters further. I welcomed the attention he showered upon me, and in that whirlwind of excitement, I lost sight of what truly mattered, my love for my husband. The crux of the issue lay in the fact that I got caught up in the thrill of it all. Our private moments, captured in photos and videos, were shared with my husband by a mutual friend who happened to be honeymooning in the same place while we were there. I had no prior knowledge that they would be in the same location, and their intervention felt like a cruel twist of fate. Despite my attempts to reason with my husband, he remained dead serious about proceeding with the divorce. He showed no inclination to work through our issues, even when I proposed seeking help from a marriage counselor. I was bewildered by his quickness to give up on everything we had built together, disregarding my love and commitment. It was only after a conversation with a friend that I began to see things from a different perspective. She made me realize that perhaps my husband had been contemplating leaving our marriage all along, and my actions inadvertently gave him the excuse he needed to do so. Encouraged by her advice, I resolved to fight with everything I had to make him see the pain he had caused me. In an unexpected turn, I received more bad news. I was let go from my job. My boss explained that my messy divorce situation might implicate him, especially since he was in line for a promotion. It felt like an additional betrayal, and I was left with a sense of loss that extended beyond my personal life. Although my boss offered some compensation before parting ways, it did little to ease the turmoil I was experiencing. Now, I found myself in the midst of a job hunt while simultaneously battling for alimony. After some time had passed, I managed to secure my share of the house and alimony from the divorce. Financially, I was doing all right despite the struggles. My ex-husband had contested fiercely to keep the house, but the court ruled fairly in my favor. I recently found a new job, though it paled in comparison to my previous position, and the benefits were far from ideal. With my alimony set to run out in less than a year, it felt as though I was living on a tight budget, constantly stressing over finances. Looking back, I began to question my approach. While I recognized that I had betrayed our marriage, I couldn't ignore the fact that my ex-husband had obligations toward me as well. I felt vengeful and spiteful at times, but marriage is a legal commitment, and I had genuinely believed we could have resolved our issues together. Regret washed over me as I contemplated how differently I could have handled the situation. Perhaps if I had approached our problems with more care, my life wouldn't be as messy and lonely as it is now. There was a time when we were an inseparable couple, deeply in love and unable to be apart. A few years ago, my husband expressed a strong desire to start a family, but I wasn't ready. The pressure mounted, and against my better judgment, I eventually agreed to the plan. Last August, we welcomed our first child into the world, a beautiful, funny little girl who instantly became the center of our universe. We both adored her more than anything. I decided to take a year off work to nurture our daughter, but as the months passed, I began to feel trapped in that role. I missed my freedom, growing increasingly resentful of the decision I had made. One fateful night, after months of feeling stifled and isolated, I went out for drinks, only the second time in about 7 months. It was during that brief escape that I started receiving attention from guys, a reminder of the thrill that had once been a part of my life. In that moment, they were buying me drinks and flirting with me, and in the excitement of the moment, I completely forgot that I had left my wedding rings at home. The thought of mentioning my marriage never crossed my mind. I was caught up in the thrill of the night. When I finally made it back home, I was intoxicated, and the argument my husband and I had earlier in the evening was still lingering in the air. I struggled to remember the specifics of our disagreement, but that didn't matter as we both eventually drifted off to sleep. As the sun rose the next day, a wave of realization washed over me. I was perilously close to betraying my husband, not necessarily in a physical sense, but definitely on an emotional level. Overwhelmed with guilt, I chose to confess my feelings to him, but instead of addressing my emotional turmoil and the fact that I came home drunk, he fixated on our previous argument. This dismissal only fueled my frustration, and I practically shouted at him, emphasizing that I was expressing my desires to stray from our marriage. After some tense moments, he finally seemed to grasp the gravity of what I was admitting. A month passed without any significant changes in our relationship. I reached a point where I felt I needed a break. So, I decided to take a month-long vacation with our daughter, traveling across the ocean back to my hometown. This trip was especially meaningful as it marked the first time our family would get to meet her. I thought a month would provide enough time to process everything and gain clarity, but things took an unexpected turn when I spotted my ex walking down the street. Living just down the road from my grandma's house, he was the only other man I had ever truly loved aside from my husband. However, I couldn't help but wonder if my feelings were merely a product of nostalgia, a romanticized memory from a youthful summer fling at the age of 16. Returning to that fateful moment, we arranged to meet. I was in desperate need of a friend, and he was available. We found ourselves sitting on his couch, tears streaming down my face as I poured out my soul, feeling like my life was in utter disarray. He comforted me, and before I knew it, we shared a kiss that quickly escalated into a passionate make-out session. In that instant, it felt profoundly inappropriate. A deep longing for my husband surged within me. I wished he were the one holding me, enveloping me in a warm embrace. Yet, he was thousands of miles away, and, truthfully, I hadn't been feeling the love and affection I craved from him in a long time. The very next day, I confessed to my husband that I was still uncertain about our marriage, but I was adamant that I did not want to be with my ex. My intention had been to show my husband that I was a person he could potentially lose. He was understandably upset and expressed his anger, stating he could barely even look at me on Skype. In that emotional whirlwind, he sent me a meme that read, "If you love somebody, you don't mess around with someone else." This brought about a moment of clarity, but unfortunately, I made a poor choice. I found myself returning to my ex's house. Craving affection and comfort in a time of confusion, we ended up engaging in sexual activity twice. Meanwhile, my husband had already warned me that if I saw my ex again, it would mean the end of our relationship. In the following 2 or 3 weeks, I managed to keep my secret hidden, but eventually, I returned home, where my husband was making genuine efforts to mend things between us. It felt like there was a chance for us to heal. When he asked me if I did anything else with my ex, I initially lied, but eventually, I decided it was best to come clean. Once I revealed the truth, I watched as he felt betrayed all over again. I was filled with remorse, regretting every decision that had led us to this moment. Despite my genuine desire to work things out, it felt like he was using me as a verbal punching bag, expressing his pain through words. I understood that his way of trying to connect with me was to stay present and not leave, but I realized that I had only revealed the whole truth to him just a day before. It was clear that he needed more time to process everything. Now, the burning question lingered in my mind: what should I do next? Alright, that was quite a story. Now, let's shift gears to another thrilling one. Stay tuned as we dive into it. Story 3. I recently went through a difficult life situation that has left me feeling more sad and down than relieved. It revolves around my relationship with my ex-girlfriend, whom I'll refer to as Bonita. My name is Louise, and our story began about 2.5 years ago when Bonita and I started dating. We first met in an unusual setting. She was cutting my hair. Bonita is a successful cosmetologist who has her own chair and sink in a beauty shop complex, where independent cosmetologists like her rent space. At 26 years old, she has built a solid reputation in her field. As for me, I work as the operations manager and head designer at a landscaping company. I have been with this company since I was 16, and at 27, I still love my job and appreciate my boss. My company has faced some challenges over the years, notably losing customers and employees. When I was 19, the owner recognized my potential and asked me to step into a more managerial role. I quickly took charge, building up our team and bringing in new clients which earned me finder fees along the way. Today, our company is 4 times the size it was when I took over, and my success has been acknowledged by the owner, who has granted me 25% equity and operational ownership in the business. This means that I share in the profits and have the option to buy the business if it's ever sold. The owner believes that I played a crucial role in keeping the company afloat during tough times. When Bonita and I began our relationship, we instantly clicked. She resonated with me not only because she was also a small business owner and a hard worker, but also due to her level-headedness and thrifty nature. This was quite different from the girls I had dated before. Despite her attractive appearance, Bonita had a curvy body type that was a departure from my usual dating preferences. However, I embraced this and found myself growing very fond of her. I was transparent from the beginning, telling Bonita that I wasn't looking for anything serious because my main focus was on growing my business. I shared my struggles with faith in marriage, citing the high divorce rates and perceived injustices in family courts. Nevertheless, I did express my desire to find a nice woman to build a life and family with. Bonita revealed that she shared similar views on many aspects of life, though she still believed in the possibility of marriage when it came to the right match, especially given our shared values in our community and faith. Both Bonita and I are Hispanic Americans and share the same Catholic faith, attending the same parish. While her family is from the eastern Mexican state of Veracruz, mine hails from the west, specifically Sonora. Her grandparents immigrated to the U.S., while my parents were born here. Although our families had some social interactions, exchanging pleasantries at church events and community festivals, we weren't close friends and didn't have any connections prior to our relationship. In the beginning, we would only see each other once a week. However, as we got to know each other better, our meetings increased to 2 days a week. By the last 5 months of our relationship, we were spending 4 to 5 nights together each week. Both of us felt it was essential to maintain some personal space to focus on our respective businesses, nurture our friendships, and keep the spark alive. If I had to capture the essence of our relationship in one word, it would undoubtedly be happy. We connected on both a mental and physical level, sharing very similar personalities, and simply enjoyed each other's company. Bonita shared a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate named Katrina, who also worked as a cosmetologist at the same salon. I had some reservations about Bonita living with Katrina because of Katrina's lifestyle. She enjoyed partying and frequenting bars, nightclubs, and after-hours spots, which was in stark contrast to Bonita's more subdued approach to social drinking. Bonita either drank occasionally or not at all and consciously avoided places like bars or clubs. I remembered that Katrina had cut my hair once before I started dating Bonita and had shown interest in me, but I wasn't drawn to her type since I preferred to stay away from individuals who heavily drank or regularly went out to clubs. My concern was that Katrina's habits might influence Bonita negatively, but thankfully, that never became an issue during our relationship. Over time, however, the dynamic in their living situation began to shift. Bonita and Katrina's friendship deteriorated, and they no longer enjoyed living together. Eventually, after 6 months, Katrina made the decision to move out and relocate her business to a different salon. This shift in their living arrangement brought some peace, but it did signal an underlying tension in Bonita's life that I couldn't quite grasp at the moment. I felt a wave of relief wash over me when I realized that Bonita was perfectly fine with managing the rent on her own and actually appreciated having the apartment to herself. It was a comforting thought knowing that she valued her independence. I live in a unique space, a converted commercial building nestled at the back of my parents' property. When my dad purchased our first home, his primary goal was to acquire as much land as he could for growing vegetables and fruit trees. Back in those days, houses in our neighborhood were surprisingly affordable, with some even selling for under $40,000. My dad managed to buy our house along with the 4 empty lots surrounding it, 2 on each side, which had been cleared due to demolitions. This entire package cost him less than $50,000, giving us a sprawling property with an impressively spacious backyard. The land behind our house was once owned by a utility company that no longer needed it. It included an old brick building, built nearly a century ago by the Works Progress Administration and constructed to withstand heavy loads. When the utility company vacated the premises, my dad seized the opportunity to acquire the building and its surrounding land at a remarkably low price. He then handed the property over to me, and I took on the challenge of transforming it into a modern space with an open floor plan, a loft, and even an internal garage. Now, it's arguably the most impressive structure in our city neighborhood. Moreover, the landscaping across the entire property is exceptional and genuinely reflects my passion for gardening and design. Over the years, our neighborhood has experienced significant gentrification, causing property values to soar to levels many times higher than what my dad initially paid. I take immense pride in my parents' achievements and the foundation they have built for our family. Last September, my dad, my brother, and one of my cousins journeyed to the Hero area to visit my grandparents. This trip was not just about catching up, it also involved helping out with some house repairs and reconnecting with our extended family on my dad's side, all of whom reside there. We had been looking forward to this visit for over a year, each of us coordinating our schedules to ensure we could take time off work. While I was genuinely excited about the adventure, I couldn't shake the worry about being away from Bonita for such an extended time. To bridge the distance and ease the loneliness, we committed to talking and texting daily, even utilizing FaceTime to maintain our connection. The trip was fantastic, and the days flew by. Upon my return, Bonita and I picked up right where we had left off. Our relationship deepened significantly, leading me to reconsider my views on marriage. Just a few weeks after getting back, I started to notice some changes in Bonita. She appeared to have a fuller figure than usual, her cheeks seemed more flushed, and honestly, I found her even more attractive than before. However, I also observed that when we were together, she would sometimes feel unusually warm or even overheated, a change I hadn't seen in her prior. Interestingly, Bonita started taking more initiative in our physical intimacy and sought to spend extra time together. Then, a couple of weeks later, she approached me with a serious look on her face. She revealed that she had taken 2 tests, both confirming that she was pregnant with my child. I was taken aback because I had always been diligent about using protection, ensuring that we had no skin-to-skin contact unless I was wearing a condom. Bonita produced a manila folder filled with printed articles presenting studies that indicated protection methods were not entirely foolproof, with failure rates varying from 2% to as high as 78%. I realized she was anticipating my skepticism, which I appreciated. While I felt an overwhelming sense of joy at the prospect of becoming a father and being Bonita's life partner, I also grappled with the timing. This wasn't part of my initial life plan, but I understood that sometimes life takes unexpected turns. We spent the rest of the night discussing our future, weighing our options, and figuring out what this meant for us. The following day, I broke the news to my parents. My mom had mixed feelings. While she was disappointed to learn that we had been intimate before marriage and using protection, she was overjoyed at the news of becoming a grandmother. She suggested that I think seriously about marriage to make things right. My dad took a different approach, simply asking if I was happy with the news. I nodded and responded with a confident yes. Even though it was not a part of my initial plans, I found myself accompanying Bonita to break the news to her parents. Their reactions were strikingly similar to those of my own parents, who had also been quick to launch into a series of questions about marriage. It seemed that conversations about commitment and future plans were suddenly at the forefront of everyone's minds. Bonita, enthusiastic about our news, proceeded to share it with her extensive network on Facebook, which boasted over 5,000 friends and followers. The response was overwhelming, with her post receiving more than 2,000 likes, loves, and supportive comments. Bonita's connections spanned our parish, local community, and even people she had met while working at her beauty shop. It was clear that our relationship was flourishing, and as we prepared for the arrival of our child, we found ourselves growing even closer. While we continued to live separately, we were actively strategizing on how to bring Bonita into my home before the baby arrived. Our plan included covering the last 3 months of her lease to ensure a smooth transition. However, the situation took an unexpected turn when Katrina appeared at my workplace, requesting a private conversation with me. She had something on her mind that she felt compelled to share, and I could sense the urgency in her tone. Katrina expressed her suspicion that Bonita might have been unfaithful during a time when I was not around, suggesting that there was a possibility the baby might not be mine. Given the contentious relationship between Katrina and Bonita, I initially dismissed her comments as perhaps a reflection of their issues rather than credible information. Nevertheless, Katrina proceeded to recount a story involving 2 brothers, Chris and Nick, who had recently visited Bonita's salon for haircuts. The brothers, originally from Greece and in the country for a brief 3-week stay to help their uncle and aunt with a new Greek restaurant, had stopped by on a Friday and were scheduled to fly back home on Monday. They had expressed their desire for haircuts before leaving and, recognizing the time crunch, had graciously invited both Bonita and me to dine at their uncle's restaurant as a treat. We eagerly accepted the invitation, especially considering that it was dinner time, and we had not eaten since lunch. Upon our arrival at the restaurant, we were met with a warm welcome from the family, who insisted that we order anything we wanted. Katrina, who knew them well, spoke glowingly of the restaurant's atmosphere and the deliciousness of the food. After enjoying a fantastic meal, we gathered in the bar area, where Chris and I began to discuss the waterfront, a location he wanted to visit before heading back to Greece. I offered to take him there, but when I asked if Bonita and the rest of the family wanted to join us, they politely declined, citing that they were busy with restaurant responsibilities. Bonita opted to stay and chat with the family, so Chris and I set off on our little excursion. According to Katrina, she and Chris were away for about an hour and 15 minutes. When she dropped him off around 9 p.m., the restaurant was closing, and she noticed that the parking lot was mostly empty, including the absence of Bonita's car, but she thought little of it at the time. The next day at the beauty shop, Katrina and Bonita briefly discussed how wonderful the food had been and how pleasant the family from the restaurant was. This was noteworthy because their relationship had been somewhat strained prior to this encounter, making their amiable exchange particularly surprising. Weeks later, Katrina decided to relocate her business to a different beauty shop, and that's when things took an even stranger turn. She recounted a night out with some women from her circle. They had gathered at a bar, enjoyed a few drinks, and inevitably fell into the realm of gossip. Someone suggested they chat about their most significant lovers, leading to a roundtable discussion where each woman shared the names of their best and most well-endowed partners. I hadn't realized this was a topic of conversation among friends, so I was curious as to why she felt it was necessary to share this with me while Bonita wasn't present. Katrina explained that during this discussion, one of Bonita's cousins, Patricia, was present and was still good friends with Katrina. As they went around the table, sharing their experiences, Patricia revealed something shocking. According to her, Bonita outshone everyone when it came to the topic of size. Patricia recounted a time when Bonita had mentioned being with a man who was strikingly built, someone she described as Hulk-like, from Greece, and she claimed he had an impressive double-digit measurement when fully aroused. Patricia noted that while he was not particularly intelligent, his physique resembled that of a statue. This revelation stirred a whirlwind of thoughts in my mind, adding an unexpected layer of complexity to my burgeoning relationship with Bonita and the life we were preparing to build together. Bonita regarded this man as exceptionally different from anyone she had encountered before. So much so that she decided to invite him over for a second night of intimacy, allowing their connection to deepen. However, shortly after that night, she vanished from his life without a trace. When she later explained her actions, it became clear that the man was not just a fleeting romantic interest, he was a financially struggling busboy from another country. This context made it seem almost too easy for Bonita to walk away without a second thought. Hearing this revelation left me with a mix of hurt and concern, but the bigger puzzle was why Katrina felt compelled to share something that had taken place years ago concerning Bonita. Katrina then pointed out that this incident wasn't as distant as I had initially thought. In fact, it had transpired while I was in Hermosillo, and the man in question was named Nick. She described Nick vividly, portraying him as a tall, Herculean figure, though she added that he wasn't particularly known for his intellect. Katrina also mentioned that the rest of our social group, including Patricia, remained oblivious to the dinner that she and Bonita had shared with the brothers. She tried to frame the whole idea as a casual matter, laughing it off, but clearly felt it was her duty to inform me of this unfolding drama. In a surprising twist, she relayed that Patricia had previously told the group that Bonita had once declared that no one could compare to me, Louise, stating I was her best lover and her eternal love. At this juncture, I had absorbed enough information and thanked Katrina for bringing it to my attention. However, doubts began to creep in. I couldn't shake the suspicion that she might be fabricating these stories out of jealousy, perhaps even trying to sabotage the relationship I had with Bonita. That evening, when I visited Bonita's place, our time together was as enjoyable and pleasant as ever. I chose not to bring up the conversations I had with Katrina because I didn't want to cause any unnecessary turmoil, especially if what Katrina said turned out to be an outright lie. But as the morning rolled in, my curiosity gnawed at me, and I found myself trying to call the phone number of the brother, but the attempt failed miserably. The line was either disconnected, I had dialed it incorrectly, or perhaps some other issue was at play. As the day progressed, I was still preoccupied with the information swirling in my mind. Around 1:30 p.m., I decided to pay a visit to the Greek restaurant, hoping to catch a chance encounter with the uncle and clarify my suspicions. Upon arriving, I enjoyed a delicious meal, and as I was finishing, the uncle approached my table to express his gratitude for my choice of their establishment. He spotted my landscaping truck and inquired if I was in the landscaping business. I confirmed that I was, which piqued his interest in getting an estimate for some landscaping work on their building. After I finished my meal, we conducted a walkthrough of the property, and once we completed it, I assured him I would return with a detailed estimate. Then, I decided to set aside my business inquiries and pose a personal question. I asked if he was the uncle of Chris and Nick. He confirmed this and mentioned that they had returned to Greece. Curious, I inquired if he had met them during their stay, explaining that a friend of mine had interacted with them, and I wanted to reach out to Nick to ask him something. The uncle was interested and asked what the nature of my inquiry was, offering to pass the message along to Nick if needed. I explained that I wanted to know if Nick was familiar with a woman named Bonita. Upon hearing her name, the uncle's face lit up, and he enthusiastically confirmed that he knew Bonita, expressing his fondness for her. He shared that she had dined at the restaurant one evening with a friend and that Nick had gone on a couple of dates with her just before his departure. The uncle added that Nick believed they were in love, but since returning to Greece, Bonita had been ignoring his calls and messages. Naturally, the information struck a chord of sadness within me. The uncle, sensing my dismay, proposed that we call Nick, leading me back to his office. He dialed Nick's number on speakerphone as I braced myself for the conversation. When Nick answered promptly, they exchanged a few words in Greek, a language I didn't understand, making it all the more surreal. After their brief dialogue, the uncle turned to me and asked how I knew Bonita, curious if I could convey any message to her from Nick. I found myself hesitant to spring this heavy information on them. I assured both men that I wasn't angry but was rather feeling a deep sense of sadness about the situation. Finally, I revealed that Bonita is my girlfriend, and the moment hung heavily in the air as all the pieces of this convoluted puzzle began to align. The moment the uncle answered the call, there was a clear expression of genuine surprise on his face, almost palpable in the air. His reaction showcased a deep sense of shock at the new information being revealed to him. For several minutes, he engaged in a conversation with both Nick and Greek, the dialogue flowing between them. As the conversation gradually came to a close, he apologized sincerely for the unexpected situation and conveyed that Nick, too, was remorseful about it. The uncle relayed how Nick had no prior knowledge of my existence, and he expressed his regret over that revelation. He further mentioned that Nick was deeply upset, particularly because Bonita had not been forthcoming about her relationship with me. The uncle indicated that Nick's heart had been broken, as he had envisioned building a romantic relationship with her. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked the uncle if Nick had ever suggested that there was any intimate involvement between them. There was a noticeable pause, a moment of hesitation, before he carefully replied that he would prefer not to disclose that information. To wrap things up, he extended his heartfelt apologies, not only on his behalf but also on behalf of Nick and our entire family. That evening, I had a conversation with Bonita. I casually asked her whether she had visited the Greek restaurant, mentioning that I had dined there myself recently. She seemed taken aback by the question and asked if the food was any good. I affirmed that it was, and I casually pointed out that I had bumped into Katrina, who had mentioned that both Bonita and she had enjoyed a complimentary meal there. Bonita recalled the meal, explaining that they had received the free food as a token of appreciation for their exceptional work in washing and cutting the hair of the owner's relatives. Perhaps I could have broached the topic with more subtlety, but I decided to be direct and inquired about her relationship with Nick. A puzzled look crossed her face as she responded, "Who?" I clarified, stating that I meant Nick, and asked if something significant had occurred between them that weekend. Her expression shifted to bewilderment and agitation as she replied, "What are you talking about?" I pressed on, revealing that I had spoken to Nick on the phone earlier that day, and he had admitted to everything that had transpired. In response, Bonita firmly denied any wrongdoing, stating that the most they had done was her giving him a ride around town after dinner, a claim that raised my eyebrows in skepticism. I probed further, questioning why she hadn't mentioned this earlier and voicing my doubts about her account. I also mentioned the claim made by others that she had referred to Nick as her most well-endowed lover while considering me her best lover. Bonita vehemently denied having said such things and accused someone of spreading malicious rumors out of jealousy, aiming to drive a wedge between us. Eventually, I suggested the possibility of a DNA test to clarify the situation, and she surprisingly agreed without hesitation. I proposed making the appointment for the following day, but she insisted on waiting until after the baby's birth. Although I respected her wish, I made it clear that our relationship would be strained in the meantime and that we wouldn't be moving in together until we resolved the uncertainty. This revelation brought her to tears, and I reassured her that I would support her throughout her pregnancy, regardless of the circumstances. In a tearful plea, she exclaimed, "Why won't you believe me? I love you more than anything and would never do anything to hurt you, I swear." The next day, Bonita took to Facebook to post about the troubles we were facing, claiming that troublemakers were trying to sabotage our relationship and that I had developed cold feet about becoming a father. Her post received an overwhelming response, with over 1,700 likes and an outpouring of prayer and hug emojis. Upon seeing this post, I asked her to remove it due to its inaccuracies, and she promptly deleted it. Later that same night, Katrina made her own post on Facebook, asserting that no one was causing issues for Bonita, rather, it was Bonita who was hiding the truth regarding our relationship and the baby. This post elicited reactions of shock and anger from those who read it. Upon learning about Katrina's post, I asked her to take it down, which she did, but by that point, the word had already spread throughout the community. Rumors circulated, suggesting that Bonita had been unfaithful, and people began to question whether the baby was mine. This incident set the tone for the following months, as our relationship remained strained and fraught with tension. Still, I continued to offer my support, even going so far as to purchase over $1,400 worth of baby items, including bassinets, strollers, and tubs, all in preparation for the new arrival. When the baby was born, I found myself present at the hospital, an experience that was both overwhelming and emotional. Holding that beautiful child for the first time brought tears to my eyes, and it was a moment that felt monumental. As I was passing by the hospital station on my way out, the head nurse approached me with an important task. She informed me that she had the birth certificate ready for me to sign as the father. In that moment, I discreetly shared my intention to sign it only after we had completed the DNA testing, a request that seemed to take her by surprise. She quickly expressed her apologies and explained that Bonita had given her specific instructions to include my name on the certificate above the father's signature. The nurse assured me that she would promptly correct the document. Meanwhile, Bonita had made it clear that she was not willing to undergo DNA testing at the hospital. In a bid to reassure me, she exclaimed, "Don't you love your baby? He's yours. You can see it in his facial features. He adores you, and I love you more than anything. Please, don't make me go through with the test, it would break our trust and ruin our family." I understood her emotional plea, yet I reiterated to Bonita that I needed certainty to move forward. However, she persisted in her refusal. That evening, she posted a photo on her Facebook page featuring her and the baby, who was wearing an adorable shirt that read, "Daddy's Boy." The accompanying caption stated that Daddy loved the baby but had reservations about parenthood, and she asked for prayers. The post quickly garnered over 500 responses before I even had a chance to see it. Concerned about the implications of her post, I called her and requested its removal, which she promptly agreed to. Given the escalating situation, my boss recommended taking legal action to secure a paternity test. He connected me with an attorney who initiated the process. It was not a step I wanted to take, but Bonita had left me with no other choice. During the court proceedings, the judge inquired about our respective reasons for being there. My attorney explained that I was seeking custodial rights to the child if he turned out to be mine. Bonita attended the court session without any legal representation and volunteered to grant me 50/50 its custodial rights without the need for a test. However, the judge, as expected, had to address the doubts surrounding paternity. My attorney affirmed that yes, there were doubts, and we were prepared to provide witnesses to support that claim. The judge then issued an order for a paternity test and expressed hope that the situation would resolve favorably for both of us, emphasizing that the baby deserved a loving mother and father. In the meantime, Bonita decided to name the baby after me, giving him my first name and hyphenating my middle name with her last name, while retaining her maiden name as the baby's last name. Now, the child bore my full name, which could potentially lead to confusion as he grew older. The day scheduled for the paternity test came and went without Bonita's participation, which led us back to court. This time, the judge ordered her to undergo the test or face the possibility of contempt of court. Finally, she consented to take the test, and while I thought this would bring me some relief, I found myself engulfed in a profound and dark depression that I had never experienced before. I felt as though I had lost the love of my life along with the child I had hoped was mine. Some individuals in our parish and community began suggesting that I should step up, marry Bonita, and be a father to that little boy. I wished I could be a better man and embrace that role, but I simply felt it was beyond my capacity. Our priest had a private conversation with me, sharing a Bible story about a man, possibly named Jacob or Joshua, who went off to battle and returned years later to find that his wife had given birth to another man's child because she believed he would not return. Rather than reacting with anger, the man professed his love for his wife, took responsibility for the child, and they lived a happy life together. The priest relayed this story to illustrate that relationships in such circumstances can work, but he emphasized that he respected any decision I might make. I explained to him that while the man from the Bible was indeed good and brave, my situation was markedly different, and I could never trust Bonita again after everything that had transpired. Despite the ongoing search for truth, Bonita continued to post on Facebook about her and the baby, frequently mentioning me in her updates. Her latest post featured the baby dressed in a one-piece outfit emblazoned with the word Junior, a clear implication of my presence in their lives. He is my namesake, which adds a layer of complexity to the situation. However, since the truth came to light revealing that I am not the father, the reaction has been somewhat muted. Only a handful of people, primarily those in Bonita's inner circle, her family and closest friends, have engaged with the posts I've shared. I suspect that, like me, many of them are genuinely concerned about her mental well-being. In an effort to navigate this challenging situation, I had another conversation with Nick, who relayed information through his uncle regarding the paternity test and the high likelihood that he is actually the father of the child. Nick mentioned that he tried to reach out to Bonita, but she has now blocked him, which complicates matters further. Despite this setback, he intends to come back next month for a 3-week visit and is hoping to meet with her during that time. Nick has expressed a sincere desire to be a responsible father to the child. He is even considering relocating to the United States to ensure he can actively participate in the child's life. Given the gravity of the situation, I advised him to get a DNA test done first before making any additional plans. He indicated that he has already consulted with a Greek attorney, who informed him that his options are somewhat limited due to Bonita's status as an American citizen. Nick is planning to speak with an attorney upon his arrival here to explore his legal options regarding paternity and custody. I genuinely hope that Bonita will come to her senses and consider giving Nick the chance to be a loving father. It could be beneficial for both of them, especially if she helps him in his quest for citizenship. From my interactions with him, Nick appears to be a decent person, and he comes from a supportive family. I truly wish the best for Bonita, her son, and Nick, as they navigate this new chapter in their lives together. To celebrate the birth of baby Louise, I decided to invest $1,000 in Bitcoin through a platform called Pipl, as well as deposit another $1,000 into a savings account via the same service. I realize that this investment may not have been the most prudent choice, especially given the circumstances, but it gave me a sense of contentment and purpose in all this upheaval. Lastly, I took Katrina out for lunch as a way to express my gratitude for her role in revealing the affair Bonita was involved in. While I may not always agree with the choices Katrina makes, I will always appreciate the impact she has had on my life. This journey has been a roller coaster of emotions, and that's all I have to share at this point. I'm grateful to anyone who took the time to read my entire story. May God's blessings be with everyone involved in this complicated situation.